question here is, what do we do here? So the short answer to that question, in my opinion, is yes. So I'm going to spend a few minutes, 5 minutes, kind of building up my argument. But before I do that, I think one theme that has come out is that we are in a power shift today, right? This is not a normal 20-year, 30-year change that we are looking at. This is a 100-year change that we are looking at. This is unusual because the scope and scale of the change that will be in front of us is certainly not in our lifetime's experience, not in our parents' lifetime experience, perhaps in our grandparents' lifetime experience. Now, we often, therefore, tend to discount it because we as human beings are not wired for non-linear change. Right? I can give you many, many examples where this is true, but my personal example is I lived in this Bellhead's world, AT&T Lucent, for a number of years. I then built a company that became part of Cisco, and that's when I left the telecom world in 2004. And if you came to me in 2004 and you said your old mothership, AT&T, which was then the largest carrier of paid international voice minutes, would not be the #1 company 10 years from now, I would have certainly laughed at you. And the fact of the matter is that just 5 years later, in 2009, a company took over. And that was from a little place that I wouldn't have been able to put my finger on at that time, called Estonia. And that company was Skype. Oh. And it was unprecedented. I mean, that a company that had been built by Alexander Graham Bell and for 60 years, 70 years, dominated telecom and talking on the phone, international talking on the phone, was supplanted by this little company whose population was not more than Indranagar and Koramangala put together. So, non-linear change is really, really difficult to grasp and understand. So, I think, the fact is that the nature, the structure of the industry, because jobs are inherently linked with that, is going to change. And to the men here, I ask you, how many of you are wearing ready-made shirts? And how many of you are wearing darzi stitched shirts? Now, 20 years ago, the answer would have been completely different. And you didn't ask for this change, I didn't ask for this change, but this is upon us. And therefore, the pecking order of jobs in the shirt industry has completely changed. Earlier, every darzi would make a little bit of money, and now, there is this designer of shirts who makes all the money. The worker makes very little money, and maybe the retailer makes some money. So the pecking order of jobs has changed. So I think, first and foremost, it is a given that the pecking order of jobs will change dramatically. And in this new pecking order that we are talking about, we know that the people who are doing low-end repetitive work, their salaries are going to be capped. They are capped today at $8 an hour because you have robos who can do stuff at $8 an hour. And that is predicted to come down to maybe $5 or $4 an hour in the next 5-7 years. So those salaries are capped. They will never ever rise above that. So that class of jobs which are vulnerable or will be vulnerable to robotics are the dead-end jobs that we are talking about. On the other hand, the job where you could make your own coffee in the coffee machine, but you prefer to go to a cafe coffee day or a Starbucks to get your coffee because you like the human touch of a barista giving you a coffee, those cosseting jobs will not go away. You will still want to go to a doctor, and it may be a quack for all purposes, but that's a person who will have a human touch, a bedside manner, because you will feel better as a human being treated by a human who on the back end may be using a robot, but on the front end will be a human, because we humans value human touch. Those jobs will be important. But will they be very important jobs? No. The most important jobs will be the ones where people are going to be tool makers. Because really the revolution that we are seeing is a revolution where everybody will be a tool maker. The last revolution was where everybody was a tool user. Now maybe there are some who are not yet tool users. Doctors are not yet tool users, they'll become one. Teachers are not tool users, they'll become one. But that you can see and I can see this is going to happen very quickly. But the real revolution is what she talked about in the last panel, where everybody is a producer. The tool makers will be the investment bankers of tomorrow, right? They will be the they will be the sought after jobs. Now the question is, will there be many of them or not? And I would submit to you that yes, there will be many of them. Because I think we are going to live through a Cambrian explosion of tools that we use. There'll be many, many kinds of tools. We will need a sewage system for Dharavi that will be different from the sewage system in Denmark. And it will be built by a tool maker here in Dharavi or somewhere near that itself. And so therefore we'll have many more sewage systems or types of sewage systems that we have today. And this will happen. And you are living through this. You know, we should have had only one type of phone, the iPhone. We don't. We have many, many types of phones. And the proliferation of the types of phone that we have are not coming down. We should have only one car. We don't. We have many types of cars. The proliferation of cars is not coming down. So you will have many, many tools that you will use. And therefore, tool makers that build them will be very important people. Now, I liken this to a Cambrian explosion because in the history of human or life on earth for 4 billion years, you know, believe it or not, there are in the last 500, you know, this small period of time, 40 million year period, which is roughly about 500 million years ago, saw this huge explosion of species. Nobody fully understands why. The conditions were right. And you suddenly created more species that had been created in the previous 3.5 billion years. And after that, this number of species are only coming down. Some of them in the last 100 years because of human impact, but before that, you know, for completely natural reasons. So we are going to go through a Cambrian explosion of tool makers. So if you have a child who's going to come into the job market, please make sure she is not going to be in a low-end job, which is going to be replaced by a robot, not in a cosseting job, because that's fun, you know, may have some value, but is actually going to be a tool maker. That is where I think the value lies. Now, before I get to startups, I want to submit that this is, in a way, not as you heard earlier, there is a part of India where many of these tools will come up in a very big way. Many of these cosseting jobs will come up and many of these low-end jobs will come up because the fact is that any company that was talked about today, Ola, Flipkart, I heard HDFC Bank being mentioned. Any company that you heard today is only catering to 48 million families in India, roughly 50 million families in India. Because the next set of 100 million families and then another 100 million families which are really struggling for existence, but middle 100 million families which have a per capita household income between $3,000 to $7,000 are not part of the formal economy. And this is what you heard Nandan talk about. They don't bank in the formal banking system. They don't save in the formal banking system. They don't take credit from the formal system. They pay cash, and they have been left out of the system. The system, for the first time, because of mobile phone, because of connectivity, and because of India Stack, is bringing them into the formal economy. And as they come into the formal economy, they will do healthcare differently, and they will leapfrog in terms of how you and I do healthcare. They will do education differently, and they'll leapfrog how you and I have done education, and so on and so forth. So this new India, the 100 million families of India, the Bharat, is going to create enormous set of jobs. Most of the jobs to us at this time appear as the old set of jobs, but they would be embracing the new set of jobs faster than we can imagine. Now, who will make this happen? Will it be the incumbents or will it be the startups? It won't be the incumbents. You know, we've lived this through. We've tried to tell every telco, please move to eKYC. But you know what? It was a challenger, Jio, which moved to eKYC. Because for all the others, the paper-based KYC system works just fine, right? So we know this from lots of experience, the work of Clayton Christensen, that it will not be the incumbents that will go and reinvent the way the new market is going to be serviced. It will be startups. And those startups are therefore going to create the new jobs. because the new jobs will come up in this new segment that we just talked about called Bharat. So I wish I had more time, I would have gone on.
Yeah.
Many of you know I love to talk. So, but I think I've probably spent more time, so I'm going to hand it over to Anshuman to take it
Thank you,
forward.
Sharad. And you know, when you have to speak after Sharad, it is really to think about what to cover. And probably I've been like hearing since morning, rather since evening. And one of the things which is really focused around is startups. So one of the points which I do want to touch upon is what is the perception from a talent point of view externally for startups. So we every day read media and say startups are paying this much, startups are doing this disruption, startups are, there's chaos happening, there is innovation happening. So what does today startup stands for? So is really the jury out from a startup point of view to say that this is what startup looks like? So today when we say what does a government job look like, we say stability, decent work, okay money kind of a thing, but or we say that IT services. It's a respectable job, educated man's job kind of a thing. But for whom is the startup job meant for today? So I think that is one piece of soul searching which we all sitting in this room needs to answer about, that 5 years later, what will a startup job be signifying? Is it to go and say that if you really want great money, you go to a startup, or do you really want to work hard, go to a startup, or you really want to innovate and disrupt and change India or change the world, you go to a startup? I think that is one big thing which we all in the room, because we all are part of that community, we should really mull over and say that what is the message we are going to drive out from a startup perception point of view. Sharad did mention about the Cambrian era, which means the explosion of the jobs, and the way I see it, and even if I hear all of them, the way I see is it will be the first order job, second order job and third order job. The first order job essentially is one which resides within the periphery of the organization, and the second and third order jobs are essentially the next 1 million sellers on Flipkart, or the 2 million drivers on Ola, or the 20 million practitioners or healthcare professionals on Practo platform. That is the second order, and related to third order job, which essentially brings out the fact that there is going to be a huge economy of freelancers which is going to get created. So certainly jobs are going to get created, but are they going to get created within the periphery of the organization, or they are going to get created outside the periphery of the organization? And one of the interesting things which will probably happen is it will be one person doing 5 jobs at the same point in time. So imagine in 1970s when we used to say that one man, one job throughout the career, then came the era of like 5 to 10 jobs in 30 years. And today we are talking about this whole shift about at the same time doing 5 jobs. So how will it look like? So probably in 1970 the paranoia was, oh, I will have to do 5 jobs or 10 jobs. So will I get fired? Will they really treat me well? Now who is going to own the employee when you are doing 5 jobs? So this is going to be one big paradigm shift which is going to happen. And so probably the jobs which are outside the periphery, which are more very freelance economy driven, they may be very outcome and skill driven. So if it is very outcome and skill driven, which essentially means that education may not be a very, very big standing out differentiator for many of those jobs, which probably will mean that the education system itself will get disrupted. So today, if I have to really be a freelancer and essentially not being rated, being inside the company, and I have to essentially be more focused on outcome, then probably why do I need that education from that point of view? So that is going to get disrupted, which essentially means that the jobs which are going to be within the periphery, which will define the organization is going to become much more leaner. And as they become more and more linear, they will become more flatter. Hierarchies are going to go away, and which anyway is happening. And probably, but where will the hierarchies get established? I believe the hierarchies are going to get established in the freelancers. So we will say that this is the top coder, this is the mid coder, this is the next level coder, this is the junior most coder kind of a thing. So hierarchies are going to get established there. So this is a new order which I firmly believe is going to get happen. So in a way, if you have to say that what will, and probably the core which is there within the company may essentially be more of people who have tremendous potential to adapt themselves in any environment, which means that they will be more of generalists than very specialist. And a lot of the specialist jobs may be off roles and not on roles kind of a thing. So what does it lead to? If I have to say that what will be the 2025 unicorn going to look like, which is not yet born? Is it So my view is it will be very leaner. It will essentially be an organization built with people which are fairly hired on potential, and probably it will be a fairly heterogeneous organization because you will essentially be dealing with a very diverse set of people from that point of view. And probably culture is going to be a very important element to drive those kind of organizations. And that is why when I started out at how will the startups look like, I firmly believe that in this steady state, it is the culture which is going to drive, it is the message which we are going to give out that what this startup stand for. And company culture flows from the top and bottlenecks are always at the top. So we all being representing the leadership of this ecosystem, the onus is on us to take this further and see how startups are going to create many more million jobs. Thank you.
Thanks, Anshuman. Thanks, Sharad. So I think, as Sharad said, that you have the challenge of being the last one typically to go. So I think I will touch upon more. One thing is very clear, which is coming out, is that startups are going to create jobs. And Anshuman said that instead of first order jobs, a lot of second order, third order jobs are coming. And we talked about these jobs being called Bharat, if the first order jobs are called India. So if we look at some of the characteristics of Bharat, so if you see traditionally, we as a company have done 5-star hiring, 5 city demand, 5 city supply. Now we are talking about 500 city or towns demand, 500 towns supply. So that is a very different paradigm. Then we have to support at least, if not more, 24, 25 different vernacular languages. The diversity of skills is massive over there. And then on top of it, a lot of the people that we are talking about do not have a very strong digital footprint. Possibly we are talking about their mobile number as their CV, typically. So it's not that you go on Naukri.com or a Monster or a Time Job and you find millions of such people. So against all this backdrop, basically, if we are talking about finding employment or establishing connect with those people, we believe that this is a clearly unprecedented problem. Possibly the only country which can come closest is China, which is a lot more homogeneous from that perspective, lot more state driven. So we have to look at creating a 1.0, typically to provide talent connectivity to such a large population. Now, another belief which we have seen, if you look at the lot of these so-called bottom of the pyramid jobs, the real issue is not about availability. The real issue is around accessibility to such talent. More often than not, we will find an individual in some part of the country who will be willing to do that job, happily do that job at an affordable price point. So the issue is that how do you establish connectivity with that, typically. So this is, now if we go to that, basically what will this 1.0 look like? We feel that this will mean more anytime, anywhere recruiting. If I look at a scenario till now or some time back, it takes almost 2 to 4 weeks to recruit any professional, typically. And if you look at the actual time that we spent on assessing or selecting that individual is not even 2 hours. So where is that 14.5 days going? It is essentially to coordinate, schedule, and those kind of things. So basically, if we make this whole thing completely mobility free, where the organization can recruit thousands of people in one working day, typically from the comfort of their office, or people can do that from the homes, I think is a paradigm shift. And what we are talking is not something which is new. If we look at e-commerce, online businesses, most of the businesses have talked about making this mobility free. So we feel that from a talent perspective also, I think that is one big change that will happen. And the whole jam trinity basically will play out again over there. Basically, if these people are going to be more on outcome-based engagement models, I think the Janadhar, the financial inclusion is going to be very, very important, that how do you pay to such people. Aadhaar, because a lot of these jobs required identity verification, and mobile more from an interface point of view. So all interviews, online test, simulator-based test, proctoring, all that will happen through mobile as an interface, basically. So I think that's a good hope I see, that basically the technology that is available will allow us to connect at a very large number to people in their languages and all that. Now, how will this talent connectivity improve the situation, or how it will impact? First and foremost, we see that this will be more local demand, local supply, which was not the case. We have seen mass migration of people happening for jobs. And if you look at IT, was one, as Hima said, that truckloads of people basically were recruited by companies, brought to larger cities, leading to a lot of urbanization problems and all that. I think the good part we see is that jobs will go where people are typically, so local demand, local supply. The other point which we feel is a lot of jobs which today are not viable basically will start becoming viable because of this connect. If I can recruit someone or engage with someone at an affordable price point. If you look at a company like Make My Trip, for example, I am aware they have more than 5,000 women who work from home basically, and they do a lot of travel consulting. Travel being a cyclic business which has basically peaks and troughs, that model has worked so well basically to help them manage. Plus they are able to involve and engage a class of people which otherwise they will not be able to recruit pretty much on their roles. So we see that lot more such things will become viable. It will drastically should reduce the regional imbalance. Because as we know that today, if we look at a large number of security guards, basically, or those come from the eastern parts of country, possibly that part of the country is not as developed as other part. So I think regional imbalance will also go away with that typically, and we pretty much can hope that we become one nation as far as talent is concerned. Basically, the best guy or the best employer gets to get the right talent, right price point, and do that. So I feel that basically I'm pretty much commenting from my side on basis of what basically we have listened to the day. I see that there is definitely a good amount of concern, and we being in the job business keep discussing all the time. I think future is definitely not pessimistic. Of course, the nature of jobs is going to be very different. As ANSHUMAN said that basically 4 or 5 companies, freelancing and all that. So it's going to be a jungle gym kind of a situation. More and more as professionals, it will boil down to the core, basically the basics, which is going to be about discipline, learnability, willingness to unlearn, these kind of things. And we definitely are going to see a very different job market over next 8 to 10 years.